on you every play tonight. Okay? And then come out and have fun. The gates are locked. Ain't nobody getting out now. They can't run. The gates are locked. Let's bring the fight to them, guys. Yes, sir. All right, brother. Let's pray.
The Northeast Texas Sports Network is dedicated on delivering the most entertaining sports broadcasts in East Texas. And if you're interested in having your next sporting event streamed live, visit us online at NetS.
And welcome, everyone. We're back. The bEast from the East show, preseason edition. It's your boy Brett Swinney here. Alongside of me today, we've got KO Kyle Owens. How's it going, Kyle?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm great now. It's football season. And we got the coach, Coach Jeremy Hubbard. How's it going, Coach?
It's going. It's been warm so far. You guys have seen a little bit of those guys out there working out. And, man, just kudos to those guys that are out there right now. They are killing themselves. It was great all summer, guys. And then we got to football practice, and it was hot again.
It's like the temperature went from like 80, 85, and let's just crank it up another 10 degrees here. Add some heat to it.
We can use that as a metaphor for East Texas high school football, right? Because there's a lot of teams that are going to turn up the heat here in a couple of weeks when we get cranked up.
Yeah, we got that intro there. Corey cut some highlights up for us. Shout out to Corey. Hopefully he'll be joining us on a weekly basis. This show, if you're watching this show, it's going to be airing at 7 p.m. every Tuesday night during football season. You'll have us and hopefully a couple other guys that will hop in, and we'll be previewing the pick'em contest that we have here on NetSN. But this show, we're going to talk 6A, 5A, 4A. But before we get going, I want everyone to know that we've made updates to the app. If you catch the commercial there at the beginning, if you don't have the NetSN app, I just don't know what to tell you. You're missing out.
What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
I mean, it's we've actually made some improvements. We've got game chats. We've got stadium directions. We've got it for everybody. So if you're just one of those that maybe you just need help finding the stadium every week, go. The games are all in there. They've got the schedules where the games are. You just hit the little stadium directions. It takes you right to your favorite maps program, and you can, put that in your car and take off to the game. And then once you get there, you can update everybody on how the score is going. My favorite feature, it's just simple. You can share the score with anyone without having to type the score in 18,000 times. Everyone's like, hey, Kyle, that game you're at, what's the score? And then you got to type so-and-so 7 to 14. And with 2, like now you just update the app and you just share it over. It's going to be so much easier.
Just go check the NetSN app. You'll find the score there. Don't ask
Yeah.
me anymore.
And it never fails. By the time you type it in, it's already changed.
It's true.
At
Absolutely.
least the time has changed. You know?
Yeah, that's true. It's true. But make sure you go check that out. We've got that. We'll actually have a little bit of our website up here on this as we talk about it. And the first thing we're going to do is kind of bring up our polls. We have a few more casts of voters this year. I think there's 5 or 6 of us voting this year. So this poll will be a lot better this year. Just when there's not, if we have that one person that's just kind of crazy out there, I won't mention any names. We got a few of those here, but the strong knowledge of our good quality voters will bring those to the top. Was it cream rises to the top? Is that how we say it there? So let's bring up our website here with the polls, and we'll start out with our preseason poll here, 6A, 5A, and just looking at this poll, what jumps out to you guys?
Well,
Man. Yeah, go ahead, KO.
Okay, well, so last year, I remember when we did this, I got thoroughly embarrassed by the professor because of my knowledge of 6A, 5A teams. So this year, I'm a lot more prepared. I like this. I like the rankings here. The 6A, 5A is always difficult because there's not a lot of teams to put in this spot. And I say it's difficult. The 3A, 2A, and TAPS one is the most difficult one because there's so many teams. But because there's so few teams, it's kind of anybody can get in the top 5. But I think Longview is a clear-cut number 1. I think them moving back up to 6A, they just won the last time they won a state title was in 6A. So them moving back up, I think, is they should be number 1. Texas High was phenomenal last season, had a great year. I'm good with them being number 2. I think Longview and Texas High, the 6A and 5A classes, are the 2 best teams in East Texas. And then it kind of gets muddied after that. Tyler High, I'm good with being at 3. I think Coach Woods is doing a good job with the Lions over there. I talked to him earlier this season, and he said, I said, not the way the Lions wanted to finish last year. And he goes, I don't like when people say that. He said, because we finished. He said, we saw improvement. We saw what we wanted to see going forward. Obviously, they didn't win a state championship, but they saw the improvements they needed to see. So I think Tyler High is on their way back to being the Cujo we know. Lufkin's the interesting one for me because they lost a lot, especially their do-it-all D1 running back, Kedron Young, that went to Notre Dame. I think they got a couple of questions at quarterback, too. Lufkin, I'm okay with the rankings. I probably would have been okay with Marshall and Lufkin being swapped because I think Marshall it could be a dark horse team this year. I'm really high on Marshall. I think they're one of those teams, and we saw it last year. They're one of those teams where you don't really know what you're getting week in and week out from Marshall, but it's going to be a dogfight. They're not going to lay down for you and just let you walk over them. So overall, I think these rankings are good. Like I said, if I had to make any change, I probably would swap Lufkin and Marshall, but that's just a preference thing.
That district will be interesting, Kyle, that Marshall's in. You've got Jacksonville, obviously they struggled in 4A. They're moving back up to 5A. Hallsville, always a pretty solid team. Of course, we just talked about Texas High, being at the top. They're in that district as well. Nacogdoches, they're kind of up and down. And you got White House, which that might be one that we might need to watch out for, in this poll at some point in the year too.
I thought about putting them in, but Marshall beat them. So I can't put White House in above Marshall, and Marshall beat them head up.
But the one thing we'll find out is these things will take care of themselves. And what do you see here, Coach, that you like or dislike here in this poll?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned White House. I actually had White House as number 5 in my poll. I did not have Lufkin in. I had Marshall 4 and White House 5. Longview is interesting. I mean, number 1, yes. I think the gap between 1 and 2 with them and Texas High is not as large as maybe we think it is. And even better than that, after what Coach Woods and that group did last year, I like KO that you brought up that he mentioned that, he didn't like the fact that people were saying it didn't end the way it should, they wanted to, because quite honestly, at this point last year, what did we expect of them? And there was a time in the middle of the year we were looking at them. Are they the best team in East Texas in 5A, 6A? And we were talking about what can they do in the postseason? What can they do when they get there? And look, and then he not only is he having to find a way to win games when they weren't winning games, he's trying to change the culture and the attitude of that place to get it back to where it was. So I'm really high on Tyler. I was high on Tyler High last year. You guys know that. If you listened last year, you know that I was definitely on board with what Coach Woods is doing. He's a great man, just away from the football piece, and not that a lot of guys aren't, but he's very open and honest about what he demands of his players and what he expects from them. So, but then I have Marshall. You mentioned there's so few teams, and even worse is out of the. I'm looking at the list right now. I think there's 11 5A and 6A teams in East Texas. You can take 4 of them, and they're never going to be in consideration unless something happens we don't expect. I mean, I don't mean that rude. I'm just saying, like, there's
the
a clear
disrespect.
gap.
Hey, we're not on the Disrespect
No,
Sports Network today.
no,
Coach.
listen, I don't mean it like that. But when you look at the talent gap between what I think are the bottom 4 or 5 and the rest of the group, it's pretty significant. I mean, I think we're looking at it. We're going to see the same. The 7th team I'm including this we haven't talked about yet. You guys talked about White House. I said I had them in, but also Mount Pleasant, who I think last year at times looked really good, and then the next week they look really bad, right? But I think it's there, and I think the potential is there to see those guys make a huge jump. I just don't see though. I think if we're looking at if this group, what team has the best chance to go on and win a state championship? And I don't think that they really can win a state championship, but I think the favorite in that regard is Texas High. I mean, Longview's going to. I mean, we can talk about. We may be talking about this in a minute, but you look at the Longview district; they're going to struggle to finish any higher than 3rd. Honestly, I mean that district they're in is loaded.
Yeah, you got Forney, North Forney, Rockwall Heath, Roy City, and Tyler Legacy, which is the other team we haven't talked about. It's one of those. Do we know what they have? Kyle, have you seen anything over there with that Legacy? How they're going to do this year?
I talked to Coach Trahan. I mean, they're kind of rebuilding too, and we talked to them at media day at Christus last week or a couple weeks ago. The problem. The thing about the start of the year is everybody's optimistic. Like there's nobody going into it saying, I don't know if we have it. So you kind of have to weed through the optimism and the realism that all these teams have. Is Tyler Legacy a playoff team in that district? I don't think so.
Right.
But we talk about it any Friday night, anything can happen. I don't see them making the playoffs right now, but they could catch fire.
Hey, guess who they open with? Guess who they open with?
Texas High.
Texas High. So we'll find out real quick how good Legacy's going to do as far as on our poll goes.
And then the other thing about that, Kale, we need to think about it in the same way we just talked about Tyler High last year. What Coach Wood said for Coach Trahan and Legacy, you can't just measure success by do they make the postseason, right? Because they have so far to go. They're going to have a new quarterback one way or the other, whether it's Vaughn Lane or Zach Davis, doesn't matter. It's going to be a new quarterback. And so for them, what is success? To me, it's obviously winning a few more games, but yes, Rockwall, Forney, Longview, Heath, all those teams are probably more talented, but how do they go out and compete against them? What does it look like? We hate to say there's no good losses, there's no moral victories, but it does matter what it looks like when you win or lose. It matters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, got Legacy just has struggled. It's been, let's see, last time they had a winning record, 2019 at 6-5. So it's been, I think a winning record would be a success there. They've had 2-8 and 3-8 seasons. So we'll see. Of course, getting Longview back in the district probably didn't help their playoff chances too much there.
That district, you're right, it didn't help. But Longview and Forney, I think, in my mind, are the 2 top teams in that district. I think you could add Rockwall in there. Rockwall's really good too. I think it's maybe those 3 kind of battling for the top spot in that district. Roy City struggled a lot last year, and Tyler Legacy struggled a lot. I think that game maybe in this district is to see who doesn't get last. But I think, like, and you said it too, Coach. Like, you can't measure. How do you measure success? And it's different for everybody.
Right.
Like Coach Woods was saying last year, like of course, he wanted to make the playoffs, but he saw success in the program. And another thing that we kind of touched on, this is the second year for both coaches. Last year was the first year at both these schools for both these coaches. Now you've had a whole year, a whole off season to implement your style, your culture. I think we see improvements from both Tyler teams this year. And that's not to say, like, Tyler High was on the fringe of making the playoffs last season. Legacy, I think we see a couple more wins from them this year. And like you said, Coach, how do you compete? How competitive are you in that first game against Texas High? Do you go out there and get beat 60-0, or do you win that game, or do you come out and does T High know you're there at the end of it? And I think that's how they're going to have to measure it.
And even if you lose 60-0, what do you look like on the field when you're doing it? I personally can learn more about you when you're losing 60-0 than when you're losing 17-10. Right? Like,
Absolutely.
I can figure out how successful a team's going to be when it gets the worst, not when it's mediocre or at its best. I mean, and you're right. You said this a minute ago. When the season starts, there's all this kind of optimism. And I think you have to have that, because I think if you go into it like it really hits the fan, right? But, you know, they're going to be exciting to watch. The quarterback battle is interesting, right? And I know we're spending a lot of time talking about legacy here, but Vaughn Lane got a little bit of run for him last year as a freshman. He comes back as a sophomore. Zach Davis comes in, who was the quarterback at Grace last year. I got to play against him. He's a very good athlete at quarterback. So they're going to be fun to watch offensively if they can do some things different. I don't know. Are they going to be able to stop people? And the district, the defenses are so good. And then you mentioned Texas High in the non-district schedule. It could be rough for them, right? But you want to see those signs along the way. I think the other problem is Tyler High accelerated a lot faster than we thought they would last year. Some of that was who they played. We talked about that last year during the run. And some of it was the fact that I think maybe the cupboard wasn't as bare at Tyler High last year at the start of the season as maybe it is right now at Legacy. So I think that Coach Trahan is going to do a great job there. I think that it'll all eventually get back to where they've been. It just may take a little bit of time. And I think you have to be fair in looking at it as, if they don't make the playoffs, it's a failure. No, it's not. I mean, you guys mentioned, we talked about Forney and Longview, but heck, most of the predictions have Rockwall finishing first because of the quarterback lock and how good he is, right? Then you look at the other coaches. Rockwall Heath has Rodney Webb, who's won state championships and been at a high level at both Rockwall and Denton Geyer. Marcus Shavers is the head coach now at North Forney, who was at McKinney for a long time. So this is a loaded district in a number of ways, and the deck is definitely stacked against them. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Wasn't Shavers at White House too?
He may have been before at McKinney, yeah.
I think he went to McKinney from White House. I remember Shavers being in White House. But you mentioned a team earlier, Jeremy, that I was super high on last year, and people made fun of me for it. But Mount Pleasant, they were fighting last year. There were some dogs in some games, and I'm with you. I didn't think about them until you said their name. But yeah, Mount Pleasant last year kind of had a surprising run in my mind, and I think they can build on it this season. But it's going to be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, that district's going to be really interesting. That whole region, I guess the 5A Division II East Texas district, I guess you'd call it. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it shapes out, because there's a lot of, I think we've got, a few teams that we think maybe at the top, but other than that, you could have a number of teams fighting for that third and fourth spot for sure.
Well, I mean, obviously Texas High, White House, Marshall, to me, are the top three. I don't think that Mount Pleasant, Nacogdoches, Hallsville, Jacksonville can knock one of those three. But then the battle does come from fourth, and to me, Mount Pleasant has to be the favorite because of what they did. Of those four teams left, Mount Pleasant, Nacogdoches, Hallsville, Jacksonville. We talked a lot about Nacogdoches last year. There were some times where they did some things that were really good. Same thing as Mount Pleasant, right? And then the next week they lay one down. You're like, we don't know what we're doing here. Hallsville and Jacksonville have a lot of work to do to catch up with those two. But I think Mount Pleasant and Nacogdoches, when they meet up, that's probably for the fourth spot. And I've got to go with Mount Pleasant going in, just because I feel like we saw a little bit more from them, maybe even a little bit more consistency, even though it maybe wasn't a lot. But I like those two for that last spot.
Yeah, that's second to last week of the season there at home in Mount Pleasant for them. So they'll have the home field advantages too. That'll help them as well. But I think that district is going to play out. It'll be interesting to see. I do like those top three though. I think to me, we'll see how White House is. I mean, obviously they're gonna be playing a pretty tough preseason schedule. They'll have Chapel Hill and Kilgore in that preseason, so we'll see what White House is made of pretty early there in the season. But I do like them in that playoff mix to get that district going. I really like that district too. I think it's going to be a dog fight, maybe a cat fight too. I don't know. Is there some cats in there? Indian?
And that is in all East Texas district, correct?
Yeah.
I know we got some geographic questions from people.
Yeah.
Not
So
about
I
this
just want to
one.
make sure that
No,
okay,
I
that's all
think
East
this
Texas.
one. I think this one is all East Texas, Kyle. I think.
But
I think
10 6A, which has Longview and Legacy, is a DFW district, right?
correct, because Longview is ranked in the DFW rankings, I believe, right? Anyway,
Okay.
just gonna throw that out there. I'm sure we'll get some hate messages later. It's okay. Shout out to Professor there. All right, so I think overall everyone's pretty happy with this. I mean, there's a couple of teams that could flip flop, but I think it'll work its way out. But I think we all are pretty locked in on those top two for sure in this poll, and then the other ones we'll see. We think Tyler I has an advantage there, but I guess it'll all play out. But I like the rankings the way they turned out so far. Since we went to the 5, I think that was a good move. We used to have 10 in each poll, and it just that's when we kind of got iffy. Like when you're putting a team in that hadn't won a game in a poll, that's kind of a rough one there. So.
Well, you got to rank who you have to rank. But Lufkin's interesting. We didn't talk a lot about them just now. They get in the district down there where they want. Coach Quick has been there for a while now, but they lose so much. They've only got 4 offensive starters back on a team that was 500 last year. And Kale, you may have spent more time looking at it already, but I just think that, I think the district sets up well for them, by the way, in their new district. I think that PA Memorial is a good team. Barbers Hill from year in and year out is competitive, but I think after that, with Galveston Ball and the Baytown Sterling and Westbrook and United, they're going to be a playoff team, and I think they'll have some success in the district. But what can they do when we get to the postseason? I guess will be the question. But
well, they'll be in a completely different region too, so that'll be interesting to see how that. I mean, that may help them too. I don't know much about the region down there, but I feel like it's usually a little bit easier than the region 2, or at least in the 4A is, because I know when Chapel Hill and them dropped down, it did get a little bit easier going south, but I don't know about the 5A version. But
it's rare you have a district at this level. I guess has a couple of 5-star guys. Zion Williams is in there for Lufkin, obviously the D tackle, but also this is you guys, if you follow recruiting and all, Jonah Williams, the receiver for Galveston Ball, 5-star prospect too. So that's a good district. And when those two play each other, you'll have one great defensive player and one great offensive player there. But you're right, man. Like going to that region, historically, that region is not as deep as Region 2 is, I would say, or the East Texas DFW region, I guess. Is I know the numbers change, but they will have a chance to be more successful potentially than they would if they were in the district with Longview and Forney in that group.
I think, and you're right. The kid from Ball, I was reading up on him when I was doing the district previews. He scored a touchdown 7 different ways last season.
Oh,
and I had to sit there and think about it. Like, how do you score 7 different ways? Well, he caught a touchdown. He rushed for a touchdown. He threw for a touchdown. He pick 6. Scoop and score, punt return, kick return. So this kid could do it all. So, to your point, Coach, he's going to be a problem. And then Zion Williams, that you were talking about, just 6'4", 315, just a hoss. He is massive down low. And talking to Coach Quick, I think defensively they're further ahead than they are offensively. So we may see these Lufkin games, maybe, these 17-14s or, something. I don't think we're going to see a lot of high-scoring affairs with the Lufkin Panthers. But I always say defense wins championships, and I think the key to winning is a strong defense. So if you're going to be strong on one side of the ball, I think defense is the best side to be strong on.
Well, they have 8 returning on defense versus 4 on offense. So, they'll have more chemistry. They'll be only plugging in three people to try to get in there versus almost the entire offense. So,
Well, and here's the thing: people don't look at those numbers about returners, right? Is not only if you have 8 returning, it means you have other guys who played a role. Like you, more than likely, you're very deep if you have 8 or 9 starters back. I mean that because you're not losing them; they're not starters again, but they're going to be there playing. And Coach Quick defensively, Lufkin's always, I say always, for the most part, they've been very good defensively. When you look at their best players, it's D line, linebacker. I love it. I think that they will have a chance to compete in that.
you might be partial on that D line though.
Oh,
Coach.
yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, listen. I'd love to coach Zion Williams if he wants to. He needs some D line coach down there. Don't holler. I'm just kidding. I'm not going. I don't want to start that. I'm not saying that. But as a D line coach, you'd love to have Zion Williams, right? I mean, he's just, and then to have a partner to go with him, because what makes Zion Williams even better is having another guy they've got to worry about too. Because it was just him. You can find ways to neutralize him. I don't want to say stop him, but you can slow him down. But yeah, they're loaded up front. They're big, and so if they get things figured up on the offensive side, they're going to be good.
All right, let's talk about
Zion Williams real quick. Zion Williams is we talked about D1 athlete. He's going to LSU next year, so I think he's all right.
They don't take bums up front in the front 7 at LSU. So.
No, they don't.
The wrong place. Yeah. That's okay. Maybe he'll change his mind. He's got time.
He has time. That's right.
All right, so let's talk some 4A. Now we know how deep 4A is when you can have one classification with a poll, and it's still tough to rank, guys. 4A is ridiculously deep this year. Here's our preseason poll. Let's see if we can get it all up here. Yeah, there we go. 4A East Texas poll. We got Chapel Hill 1, Carthage 2, Kilgore 3, Gilmer 4, Lindale 5, Pleasant Grove 6, Van 7, Pine Tree 8, Jasper 9, and Center 10. All right. Start with you, Kyle. What do you think about this ranking?
Well, I have an issue.
Okay.
My first issue is, why are we leaving state champions at 4? They won a state championship last year, and they are 3 teams ahead of them. Don't like that.
I have a rebuttal on that. Just my
okay. That's fine. But in my mind, in my poll, you win a state champion, you're the champion until someone knocks you off. So in my poll, I think I had Gilmer number 1 just because they won state and they got good athletes coming back. Like, I don't think – will they win another state championship? I don't know. I don't know if they'll win it again this year, but I do know that they're going to be in the competition, the conversation. I do know that they're going to be there at the end. But I have Gilmer number 1. The Chapel Hill, Carthage, Kilgore section. This can go – Chapel Hill went all the way to the state title last year, state championship game last year, and you got your 2 Hosses coming back in Brisbane and Stewart. So I would put them at number 2, right behind Gilmer, just because Gilmer won the state title. Even though Chapel Hill got there, they didn't succeed.
Hey, Kyle, in week 1, who Gilmer and Chapel Hill played? Who won that game last year?
Chapel Hill won.
Okay,
you're right. But do they give trophies for week 1, or is it week 16? They give trophies?
Doesn't matter. They weren't in the same division.
I wish they did.
Division.
It does matter though, because one of them won it and one of them didn't. That's not a knock on Chapel Hill. I'm just saying,
if you'd have flipped them and Chapel Hill would have played the schedule that Gilmer played, I think they would have been a little bit different. If you saw the team from Anna and the 5A team that Chapel Hill had to play, you would think twice about it. Now, you see that they're not in the way this year, so hopefully it'll be a little bit better. But anyway,
okay.
That's my thing. It was a head-to-head deal. You had a head-to-head matchup there.
In week 1, Brett. If they just not like to play in week 16.
Guess what? They're going to run it back, so we'll know here pretty quickly.
And again, the week 1 game will not matter at the end of the year. That game's irrelevant at the end of the year. I mean, it doesn't. That same team that Chapel Hill, that same Gilmer team that Chapel Hill played in week 1 was not that same team even 6-7 weeks later. Like, Coach Metzel and his staff, to their credit, they made adjustments when needed, and a lot of adjustments defensively. We talk about defense. And Coach Metzel has said this. They made a lot of adjustments defensively, moved some people around, got some people up from JV to make those adjustments, and that's great coaching by Gilmer to realize where they were lacking at and to fix that for the playoff run. Now, back to the poll. I would have Gilmer at number 1. I would have Chapel Hill at number 2. That Kilgore Carthage, that's interesting too, because Yes, Carthage beat Gilmer, or Carthage beat Kilgore last year, but Kilgore, I think I'm high on Kilgore. Okay, Jaden Sanders, their outstanding corner, he just committed to Michigan yesterday. Um, I I'm high on Kilgore. Kilgore made a run in the state 7-on-7 tournament. I think I would put Gilmer at 1, Chapel Hill 2, Kilgore 3, Carthage 4. I think I'd have and this may be the lowest that Carthage has been in decades. But I think that's how I would rearrange that top 4 based off last season and what I think they have now. Jet Surratt's an amazing quarterback down there in Carthage. Carthage is gonna Carthage. They're gonna be good. But I would put them 4 behind Gilmer, Chapel Hill, and Kilgore. And then after that is really when it gets interesting because it's kind of a toss up after that. I think there's a clear separation from those 4 teams to the rest of the rankings. Lindell at 5. I heard from Coach Moffitt, a Van Vandel coach. He said that this may be the best Lindell team that he has seen in his 15 years at Van. And that's high. And Coach Moffitt knows ball. So for him to say that is high praise on Lindell. So put Lindell right there at 5. I don't have a problem with. Pleasant Grove at 6. They lost their quarterback. They're going to have to fill some holes, but they're going to be competitive again. Van at 7. Pine Tree is the one I'm interested in. Shine Tree was
Shine Tree.
I'm high on Pine Tree. They competed very well last year in 5A, made it to the playoffs last year in 5A. Had a big upset of Texas High at the end of the year in Texarkana. I think Pine Tree is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. I'd probably put Pine Tree above Van in this one, just because I think Pine Tree, in my mind, had more success than Van last year. Jasper and Center. Center, I think they have to do. I believe they're replacing in Monty Cross. I believe he was a senior last year, if I'm correct. So they're going to have to, and they. No offense, Rough Rider fans, they couldn't stop a nosebleed last year defensively. It was tough to watch defensively for Center. If they can get that shored up, I think Center will have a really good football team. But you got to be able to stop people. Jasper, they got that really good tight end that's going to be down there for Jasper. They were very competitive last year. I think that district comes down to Jasper and Silsby. Hampshire Finette, don't sleep on them. They won the state championship for 7-on-7, so they obviously got athletes. But that at the end of all that, that's my whole spiel. I would basically just rearrange that top 4. I don't have a problem with the bottom half.
Man, there's a lot of teams in 4A, right? And I think the bottom half is where it's the most interesting because as I went through this, the team that I didn't include in my top 10, that the more I've gone on, I'm thinking they should be closer to 5 than 10. That's Pine Tree. You just mentioned it, KO. Like, this is a team that everything you read, it's like, watch out for Pine Tree. Pine Tree's not getting the love they deserve moving down. They were, I think they're a team that 8 may be. I think when we're looking at this thing in November, 8, I don't know. The 4A in East Texas is just so good. I don't know if they can get higher than 8. You look at their district, I don't know if they can get higher than 4th with Chapel Hill, Kilgore, and Lindell, because I think this Lindell team is really good, like you mentioned. But they're a team that's all that whole district, 9-4A1 has a chance in the postseason to do some big things. Even if Palestine gets in with some of their athletes, they have a chance, right? I mean, we're talking about Palestine and Henderson like they're nobody. Henderson's got the most ground to make up, right? But Palestine, we ain't talking about them yet, and they got
new coach too.
Yeah, and with Denman, I mean, they're going to be very competitive.
Well, hold on. No Denman. He's at
he
Westwood.
went to Westwood. I forgot about that. Yeah, okay. Well,
the Westwood. But also to your point about Pine Tree, they're going to have to upset one of those. I think they're going to have to upset one of those top teams: Chapel Hill, Kilgore, Lindell. But to your point, they could be the 4th place team in that district and make it to the 3rd or 4th round of the playoffs easily.
Yeah, for sure. And when
well,
you look
Chapel
at
Hill's done it a few years. They've gotten that 3rd and 4th spot. It's not a hard route if you can get the right people you're playing against.
Well, let's just say you finish 4th. You're probably going to meet up with West Columbia in the first round. Pine Tree and West Columbia is not a game you look at and say they can't win, right? I mean, you're right. I mean, it could happen. Of course, then just things have to fall the right way for you. But we could see another scenario where 2 of those 4 teams are there in the regional final out of that district. But to the poll, I have Chapel Hill 1. Here's the thing, KO. I'm with you on the Gilmer 1 state thing. Like, there's a certain level of respect you have to have because of that. But we just saw in the college poll, Michigan won it last year. They're number 8. Washington finished second. They're not even in the top 25. People are up in arms about that. Like, look, I get it, but it's also to the next year. Chapel Hill has the best 2 athletes. Yeah, I mean, to me, they're the best team. I don't think anybody on this list would be a favorite against them at any point. That's just my opinion, right? Carthage is good. Kilgore's good. I don't think any of these teams are a favorite against Chapel Hill when they play this year. Now, with that comes a lot of pressure, right? Like, now you are the man. You with Stuart Brisbane, you are the man. You have to, like, if you're going to win it, if there's a time to win it, you better do it right now with those guys, right? Because who knows when you'll ever have 2 players like that on the same team again. It's going to be tough for you, right? The thing about Gilmer for me is this, and I don't even want to say this to you, KO, because you may slap me through the screen. I had Gilmer at 5. I just, I don't like the move that they're going to make at quarterback to start the year. I don't like it. I mean, Tennyson, to me, I know Tennyson's a great defensive back, but he was kind of the engine that got that thing going in that little run that they went on, right? I mean, we were talking about how they start. Gilmer started what last year? Like, didn't they start 0-3? I mean,
they were 3-3 at one point last year. After the first game of district, after losing to Pleasant Grove, they were 3-3.
I mean, they're okay. So maybe they started 0-3, but there was a stretch where they were like barely winning games against Paris. I mean, I remember us having conversations on this show about what in the world is going on in Gilmer. I remember one specific we were talking about, are they going to make the playoffs? And here they are, and they win a state championship. And look, there's nothing wrong with getting hot and getting on a roll and winning a state championship, man. Kudos to them. It was so unexpected. If you'd have told me a team from East Texas was going to win that division, I would have never in a million years picked Gilmer to be the one that did it, right? They got the tradition, history, all that. So I think there's a little bit of that for me is that, okay, they got hot. But what, to their credit, they finished the year a completely different team than the way they started it. But you're still the same team to some extent. Like you are what you are. You can play better, but at some point you kind of revert to the mean. So I don't know what to make of that. They could come out and start hot this year, and I'm singing a completely different tune. I'm with you on Jaden Sanders at Kilgore. I'm excited to see what he can do this year. I think that. I know he was good. I don't know if I knew he's Michigan running back good. If you think about Michigan running backs, that's like a whole nother level. That's like DBs going to Texas or D lineman going to LSU or whatever. Like that's you go to Michigan play running back, you're pretty good.
What if you go to Texas play running back? You're probably pretty good too, huh, Jeremy?
Well, if you can stay healthy, CJ Baxter, but that's a whole nother story. But
then there's I'll talk about Ricky Stewart.
Oh, okay, that's fair. All right, so but then there's this next group that I'm curious about. And you mentioned all these teams: Pleasant Grove, Van, Lindale, Pine Tree's probably in this group. Like, what are they? What can they be? I'm scared to anoint them because we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I think Lindale could end up being the best of that group. I was high on Van last year. I think they have a chance to be really good again. Pine Tree's a team that I just mentioned, but Center, you're right. They couldn't. I mean, if us three were to go out there with a football, we'd probably scored 3 touchdowns against Center last year, right? I mean, how many games did they have where it was in the 60s on both sides of the scoreboard? It felt like a lot. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was many. It felt like a lot. Jasper's another team that I didn't include in my rankings. We had some discussions about maybe who should be in there. I will have them in my next top 10 as long as something crazy doesn't happen because I think they're one of the best 10 teams. I'm glad that they're in there. But even some other teams, right, we haven't mentioned. And that's the great thing about 4A. We're talking about teams like Sulphur Springs, who last year was a playoff team and had some success early on. There was a stretch there. We had them in our top 10. I've heard some talks from different coaches so far this fall about a team like maybe even Pittsburgh and what Pittsburgh could look like as we go throughout the year. We mentioned Palestine a minute ago. Then you got the traditional list of schools who are going to surprise you maybe or maybe not, and they're all in the same district. And that's Rusk, Athens, Brownsboro. It seems like we always have them in our rankings at some point in the bottom, and what are they going to be? So I'm with you. I'm with you. I think the top 3 are really good, and I think they're set as the top 3. And then for me, from 4 on down, flip a coin every week. We're just going to play some games and see what happens. I would have been happy with any of those guys being in there or not being in there.
Well, good news is we
So-
are going to play some games, Jeremy, and we're
Fine.
going to
Well,
figure it
and
out.
that was my point too about Chapel Hill. If they're ranked number 1 to begin the year, they definitely have the toughest schedule too, because they play Carthage, they play Kilgore, they play Gilmer, they play Lindell. No, I'm sorry, they don't play Lindell. Oh yeah, they play
Jasper.
Lindell, they play Jasper. Like they play 5 of those top 10 teams throughout the season.
Yeah, we'll find
So
out.
that is that.
So
and
yeah,
I
Chapel
think
Hill's
they'll be
got
fine.
Chapel Hill's got Carthage, Kilgore, Gilmer, Lindale, Pine Tree, Jasper. So yeah, they play over half of the top 10. So you'll know how
And-
good they are, or are they not?
And Jeremy, you mentioned their name earlier, and I want to bring attention to them too. The Henderson Lions and Coach Clay Baker.
Yeah.
They lost 3 games last year by 1 possession.
Yeah.
You flip that around, they're a playoff team. Like I think Henderson is not as far off as a lot of people think. Like I think Henderson is on that cusp of, again, they could be battling with Pine Tree and Palestine for that 4th playoff spot in that district.
And I'm going to say this.
Henderson's the culture was really bad there. He had a lot of work to do. So that first year, I'm imagine I wasn't at those games, but when you have a bad culture built over and over, when you get in those close games,
hard to win a close one.
You don't. Yeah. So I think Coach Baker did a great job in Carlisle. So coming over to Henderson, I would definitely really look to see them at least get a couple. Maybe they either steal 1 or 2, or they are real close again. Because Henderson, man, they've just got so much talent athletically on the field. You look at them and they look like they should be right up there with the Chapel Hill and Kilgores of the district.
So 2 things about that. Number 1, all they got to do is beat Palestine and Pine Tree. They can win those 2 games. They're going to be a playoff team, right? We actually played against Henderson at 7-on-7 this summer, and you're absolutely right. When you just look at their athletes, they have guys that can run, and they can run at a high rate of speed. KO, they are getting where they need to get, and they're getting there in a hurry. I mean, athletically, they're going to have the guys. I'm excited to see what they can do. I think Tristan Ebner being back is kind of a cool story, to be involved in what they're doing there. I think, listen, this is the truth about high school kids today. Somebody like Tristan Ebner being on their sideline, being in their locker room every day is going to automatically raise their level of play. They respect Tristan. They know what he did. They know who he is. That's going to raise some things. I watched him interact with those kids, and the kids interact with him just in one 7-on-7 game. Just one night of 7-on-7, I saw this. And I think that he's going to do great things there. I want to say this. You're talking about teams we haven't mentioned. I want to list the playoff teams that are in 4A this year that we haven't even talked about. Paris. We mentioned Pine Tree. Quinlan Ford. Wills Point. Spring Hill. Athens, Brownsboro, Bullard. I mentioned Rusk. So there's a ton of teams that were playoff teams last year that aren't even in the conversation right now, or maybe they're in the conversation, but they're not on the list. 4A is as loaded as you can get in East Texas. I mean, for as much as we struggle to maybe fill the bottom of 5A, 6A, and even the 3A and down poll, you kind of struggle to fill the bottom of it. You won't have any trouble filling 4A the whole year. Your 11 and 12 teams would be deserving of being the 6 or 7 spot, I think.
Yeah. So I'm going to go over mine since you guys did yours a little bit. Surprisingly, I didn't have Chapel Hill 1. I've got Carthage 1 in my poll right now, just because of what they return. Like they're bringing back the house. Like we talked about in our shows last year, and I was like, this is the year to get Carthage. I've said it over and over, and they got Goth this year, but this year is going to be tough. I think that Chapel Hill Carthage game is going to be one of the best around here in the area. I have them 1 and Chapel Hill right under them at 2. I have Gilmer 3. I did give them respect for winning, but I'm not going to automatically put them number 1. I think they're good. I think Kilgore is at 4, but I think that could change at some point. I think Kilgore and Gilmer are pretty close. I'm at the 4 also. I'm with Kyle. I think that top 4 is kind of the class of 4A. Coming down, I got Pleasant Grove at 5, Lindale 6, Pine Tree 7, Van 8, Center 9, and Rusk at 10. I'm giving Rusk a 10 there just because I'm giving them the NetSN bump this year, guys, because we're going to have Rusk football on NetSN. And Jeremy knows what happens. When NetSN comes and Kurt's covering your school, it's an automatic bump. So I'm going to put Rusk at 10.
I mean, what about the Rusk effect just because of who maybe one of their famous alumni are. I don't know. I
Well,
mean,
that could be it, but that didn't help you last year. Weren't you an alumni last year too?
yeah, it was. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about Russ. Obviously, let's just get there. Losing the quarterback hurts. Like Barrier being gone is a huge deal, and I think that because of that, Coach Sitton's having to figure that out. And look, Coach Sitton doesn't need me to read his resume. If you know East Texas football, you know what he's done. He'll figure it out. I think if you're going to play him, you better play him early. Quite honestly, I think they will figure. Defensively, they're always going to be tough, man. Like their Arizona Desert Swarm stuff is like. I'm glad when we scrimmage them this week, I get to go on the defensive side trying to figure out their offense without a quarterback yet, not the other way around, because they bring all kind of pressure from all the kind of different places. Defensively, they're going to be really good, and so they're in a district once again where they can get in the playoffs and have some success, and I think they'll be fine. Not that they needed me to vouch for, but you know what I'm saying.
All right. Well, that's a man. 4A and is going to be loaded. We got some great talk at 6A, 5A. But we're going to come back next week and we'll preview 3A and below. We'll talk about that poll and all the teams that East Texas has. We'll even have a little discussion probably about the East Texas DFW line there on a couple of those teams that are in our poll. We'll definitely have that discussion as well. But I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, every week, 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel. We'll have it also on the app. Make sure you go download the app on your Android and Apple devices. For Brett Swinney, K.O. Kyle Owens, and Jeremy Hubbard, we'll catch you next week right here on the bEast from the East show. See you, everybody.